Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the live studio where I'm having a conversation with Garrett Ilg, the president for Oracle Asia Pacific and Japan. And we're going to have a fascinating conversation today about all things to do with innovation, entrepreneur ecosystems, and how technology can actually reshape the foundational shifts that will impact humanity. So looking forward to a great conversation, Garrett.
Fantastic.
Well, welcome back to Asia.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't you just love the diversity in Asia, whether it's cultures, languages, ethnicities? There's so much going on, so many different facets of life that you see in different parts of Asia. And you're not new to Asia. Tell us about your tryst in Asia.
I came to Asia, Japan, when I was 10 years old with my father and mother and my brother. We moved out to Asia back in the early 70s when that was a unique thing to do for Americans. And I've been able to live and exercise my skill set in this region for now almost 30 years. In the middle of that time, I've lived in Europe, I've lived in the Americas as well.
Yep.
But one of the things that I always remember and I always get proven again and again is that Asia is a very dynamic region. It's constantly changing. No matter what you left, it won't be the same as when you get back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's fascinating. I've not met a lot of executives who are actually running Asia as a region from the US who've actually grown up here.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
That is fascinating. We know that, with the booming middle class, you've got just so much youth in this part of the region.
Yes.
And youth always brings change in different ways. And I'd like to get your thoughts on what those changing demographics are doing and contributing towards the innovation that we're seeing in the region.
Sure, it's a great point. I think one of the things you see, because the economies are just so dynamic right now, you have this surge in middle class. And the new part of the middle class are the younger people coming out of the schools, beginning their careers, working really hard and beginning to accumulate some wealth. And they're becoming a very dynamic force in their local economies, whether you're talking about Northern Asia, China, India, of course, into Southeast Asia as well. And then the effect of that is twofold. One is that you have a surge in consumerism, which again catalyzes those economies to continue to accelerate. But then you also have the openness to adopt change. And I think that's the other thing that's accelerating here, is that as these younger people, move up in their careers and they go from individual contributors to junior managers to middle managers to senior managers, they're leveraging the opportunity that change gives them to basically transform themselves and the organizations around them. So that's one big point that I think you're seeing. The other point that this is probably on a bigger scale, and we all know that they used to talk about, particularly in technology, that Asia had a 2-year lag. Something was created, and typically in Silicon Valley or somewhere in the United States, a year later the European markets adopted it, and then 2 years later you might see that same technology begin to move itself in and throughout the Asia Pacific and Japan markets. That 2-year gap is gone. That old equation is gone. That paradigm has shifted. And what you're seeing now is that in many instances, and I think a lot of this is the innovations you're seeing inside the region, but innovations even from outside the region come in much faster. And I think the internet and the cloud are partly to blame for that capability, but more importantly, it's the pull. These new leaders are taking and not waiting for technology, they're utilizing it. So in many business conferences I've been in, and particularly maybe a decade ago, you always had that kind of excuse that Asia will catch up. And I would tell you that now, and particularly with what's going on in the world right now with the pandemic, Asia is actually accelerating through that curve. And if they're not inventing it, if it's been invented elsewhere, it's coming to this market at the same time, real time.
That's fascinating, because the one thing Asia is very good at is if you ain't got it, you build it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit because you talked about the pandemic. One of the things that we see is the societal change that pandemic has brought on. It's been a watershed moment, and what it's meant is that the positive aspect of it is the acceleration that is brought to some of the other foundational shifts and the awareness, especially with the youth and the growing middle class. They're more aware of some of their responsibilities and the foundational shifts, whether it's to do with climate change or wealth inequality, financial inclusion, and so on. Are you seeing technology bring rapid change in driving some of these foundational shifts?
There's two factors, and there's two words actually that describe the current situation, and I think they're tolerance and empathy. And empathy has been much more pronounced in the environment because we're all in this together. Yeah. It's happening to each and every one of us. It's all around us. There's nowhere to escape. And we've had to some extent, just listen a little bit more to the other side of a conversation and understand more about what's happening on the other side of a table. And I think empathy is so much more prevalent now than it was previously, particularly in the hyper-competitive world pre-pandemic. The other environment which you talked about is, don't let perfect get in the way. It's tolerance. We all understand that sometimes we're using gum tape and other tools that we try to put things together just to keep it going forward. And I think this is where business leadership, but really everyone in the ecosystem, has understood to be the new norm. Momentum is so important.
Yep.
If you get stopped in the tracks of the current environment, it's like a swamp. You could get swallowed up. But if you continue to plow forward, stay, if I may, just above the water, and just keep moving yourself, your organization, your ecosystem, your employees, and your customers along with you, there's still so much opportunity out in the markets. And I think what you're going to see is that the increase in empathy, the increase in tolerance, the active acceptance of change is going to create this landscape where I think the rest of this decade is going to be incredibly opportunistic for companies, people, and foundations that say, I'm going to go out there and get it done. I might have to build it to make it happen, or I might have to bring it in to make it happen, but one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to stand still.
Yeah, and look, that's what entrepreneur ecosystems do. They don't stand still, they keep moving.
Yep.
If you had to pick one ecosystem, which one would you pick as the one that you're seeing the most traction in, just so much vibrancy in terms of as an industry, the entrepreneur ecosystem? Where are you seeing that?
So I think that there's the one that you can't see as much and the one that you see every day. I think the biggest change I've seen is in the financial system, where everything has shifted. When you go to your local store, we're not only cashless, we're hands-free.
Yeah.
Everything tap is about as close as you get to anything, and that's created an incredible new environment of the way people transact, and it goes all the way out into the mobile application and how people actually manage their finances. The less visible, actually, and I think one of the verticals that have been incredibly ambitious and taking on these challenges is travel and hospitality. Right. And I think every country, because of the different situations in each country with the pandemic, have been dealing with this, and every part of that vertical have been having their own challenges. But what is most impressive, and albeit there have been companies that just aren't going to make it through, the smaller side of the restaurants or the smaller side of the transportation business, they just don't have enough to sustain, and it's horrible what this has done to them. But if you look at the innovation going on, and if I may, into the middle, into the larger size enterprises in travel and hospitality, I saw this segment on television the other day. They used to have the spa services in airports. They're now testing centers so that you go in, get your test, prove that you don't have the disease, and then you can get on your flight.
Yep.
That used to be a place where you go get your neck or your arms or something massaged because it gets some stress out of the body, and that's adaptation. That is innovation, and it's solving a problem all at the same time.
You're absolutely right. I mean, my heart really goes out to the travel hospitality sector. One, because they bring us so much joy in the travel, but outside of that, I mean, what they're dealing with is very real. Perhaps most of us can't actually experience what they're actually going through. So once again, thank you for joining us for this session. We look forward to having many more conversations around industry transformation.